Welcome, everyone! Today, we're diving into a what-if scenario set in the Naruto universe. The story is called Naruto Copy System by Dragon NX. If you're intrigued by this amazing tale, be sure to check out the full story through the link in the description. After the first class, Nawaki rushed over to Shin. Shin, I can't believe you're in our class. Yeah, looks like I'll be needing your guidance, Shin said with a grin. No problem. In this class, I'm the top dog. Nawaki puffed out his chest, giving a thumbs up. Hello, let's get acquainted. I'm Noro Shikaku, and these are Yamanaka Inoichi and Akimichi-cha, Shikaku said, approaching with his two friends. Shin's eyebrows shot up. The Ino Shika-ch trio, in his class? He decided not to dwell on it. With his influence, who knew how the Naruto timeline had changed? He figured the major events would still occur, like the Second Shinobi World War. But with him in the mix, things might unfold differently. Nice to meet you all. I'm Uzumaki Shin. You can just call me Shin. I'm from Uzushioga in the Land of Whirlpools. Shikaku's eyes flickered with interest. They chatted for a bit, then Shikaku and his friends left. Shin scanned the classroom. He had already seen so many familiar faces, there were bound to be more. To his left, he saw two pairs of Byakugan staring at him. They looked similar. Could they be Hayashi and Hisashi Higa? His gaze continued its sweep, stopping at the two students in front of Akiko and Kai. A boy with bright blonde hair and a sunny smile. It had to be Minato Namikaze, the future Yondaime Hokage. But Minato looked quite feminine right now. His hair was a bit long, and his features were delicate. If Shin didn't know better, he would have mistaken him for a girl. So, are you enjoying yourself? Shin asked Kushina. Kushina nodded. She had been nervous at first, but now she was feeling more comfortable. Perhaps because there were four of them, plus Char with his red hair, no one had made fun of Kushina's hair color. Without any unpleasant incidents, Kushina was finding the academy quite enjoyable. Well, it would be even better if she wasn't sitting next to Ucha Mikoto. Shin, who do you think is prettier, her or me? Kushina whispered, glancing at Mikoto. Pretty? Neither. You're both cute. They were 5-year-olds, cute was the appropriate descriptor. Shin, you dummy. I'm not talking to you anymore. Kushina huffed and turned away. Mikoto poked Shin timidly. Are you two fighting? Yeah, you know how it is with kids. They get upset easily, Shin chuckled. Shin. You think I'm just a kid? Aren't you? You're literally a child, Shin said, shrugging. Gah. Kushina chomped down on his arm and refused to let go. Kushina. You bit me. Let go, or you'll regret it. I'll flick your forehead so hard, you'll cry. Shin threatened. Kushina finally released him, but not before leaving teeth marks on his arm. Look, you're making me bleed. Shin pointed at his wound. There was no blood, just teeth marks. But Kushina didn't know that. Embarrassed, she gently rubbed his arm, looking up at him with pleading eyes. I'm sorry, Shin. I was wrong. Please don't be mad at me. Don't ignore me, okay? Kushina was terrified of Shin ignoring her. I'm not mad. Shin ruffled her hair. Seeing that he really wasn't angry, Kushina giggled and snuggled closer to him. Mikoto watched them, envy gnawing at her. She thought of her own life, devoid of family and friends. Even her relationship with her clan wasn't good. She had always been alone. Shin noticed her gaze and looked at her. Mikoto quickly looked down, flustered. Oh no, he caught me staring. What do I do? Mikoto panicked. I feel like a third wheel here, Nawaki said glumly. Eek! Kushina, who had been comfortably nestled against Shin, sat up abruptly. She glared at Nawaki. Why are you still here? I wanted to talk to Shin, but you're both ignoring me, Nawaki grumbled. Just then, the bell rang, signaling the start of the next class. Nawaki trudged back to his seat, dejected. Tanaka-sensei entered the classroom. The chatter died down instantly. It seemed he commanded respect. "All right, class, today we'll continue our lesson on chakra." Tanaka-sensei launched into a basic explanation of chakra. Shin already knew all this, even more than Tanaka-sensei. The chakra refinement technique? Is this all we're learning in the academy? Kushina whispered to Shin. If this was all there was, it was pretty boring. She had already mastered chakra refinement and had quite a lot of chakra. She had expected to learn powerful jutsu in the academy. Most students probably thought the same. But the academy only taught the fundamentals. These fundamentals were important, but they wouldn't be learning any powerful jutsu here. They might learn the Academy 3, some basic trap-making, and kunai and shuriken throwing techniques. As for other jutsu, unless you had a clan to teach you, you'd have to wait until you became a full-fledged ninja and find other ways to learn them. Suddenly, Mikoto passed Shin a notebook. Shin took it, looking at her questioningly. "These are the notes I took during the lesson. Maybe they'll be helpful," Mikoto said softly. "Thank you, Mikoto-san," Shin said gratefully, opening the notebook. Her handwriting was elegant, far neater than his. It was a pleasure just to look at. Mikoto blushed, her head lowered. Shin had called her a Mikoto-san, omitting her family name. Only close friends did that. "Uzumaki-san, are we friends now?" Mikoto asked, her eyes shining with hope. Shin paused, then smiled. "Of course. And please, call me Shin. Uzumaki-san sounds too formal." "Thank you, Uzumaki." "Shin-san." Mikoto beamed. She finally had a friend. At noon, Shin and Kushina left the academy. School was out and they were heading home for lunch. "Shin, wait up!" Shin stopped and turned to see Nawaki running towards them. "Shin, you're new to Konoha, right? You probably don't know your way around. Would you like me to give you a tour?" Nawaki offered enthusiastically. Shin thought it over. Familiarizing himself with Konoha was a good idea, and having Nawaki as a guide wouldn't hurt. "Sure, that would be great, Nawaki." "Awesome. Let's grab some food first." "My treat." "Ramen, anyone?" Nawaki grinned. "Thanks for showing us around, but lunch is on me," Shin insisted. They had a decent amount of money saved up from their allowance in Yuzushio-gakure. "Well, if you insist." Nawaki considered his meager funds. He probably didn't have enough to treat them, so he didn't argue. Despite being the grandson of the Shodaime Hokuge, Nawaki was perpetually broke, thanks to his gambling addict sister. Nawaki led them to a small street lined with food stalls near the academy. They entered a ramen shop. "Looks like a lot of academy students eat here," Kushina observed. "Yeah, it's too much trouble to go home and come back. We'd lose all our lunch break. Most of us either bring our own lunch or eat here," Nawaki explained. "Makes sense. There's only a little over an hour for lunch break. Going home would be cutting it close," Shin agreed. "If your house was close to the academy, it wouldn't be a problem, but if it was far, you might be late." "Hey, Mikoto-san, you're here too." Shin scanned the ramen shop and saw Acha Mikoto sitting quietly in a corner, eating her ramen. "Wow, you have good eyes. You spotted her all the way over there," Kushina said, a hint of jealousy in her voice. "Shin-san?" Mikoto looked up in surprise. "Mind if we join you?" Shin smiled as he walked over. Kushina trailed behind him, shooting Mikoto a hostile look. Nawaki hesitated, then followed. He wasn't thrilled about sitting with an Acha. The feud between the Senju and Acha clans ran deep. "I didn't expect to see you all here, Shin-san, Kushina-san, Nawaki-san," Mikoto said with a gentle smile. "Knowing this, I would have rather gone home," Kushina muttered under her breath, loud enough for only Shin to hear. Shin ordered a bowl of tonkotsu ramen. Kushina ordered the same. Nawaki went for miso ramen. Perhaps because of Mikoto's presence, Nawaki, usually a chatterbox, was unusually quiet. Kushina waited for her ramen, chin resting on her hand. Mikoto ate quietly. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. The ramen shop, however, was bustling with activity. A while later, their ramen arrived. As Shin slurped his noodles, the shop suddenly fell silent. He looked up, confused. Then he saw a ninja enter the shop and understood. The ninja's uniform bore the same clan symbol as Mikoto, the Ucha fan. The Ucha clan sure has a presence, Shin thought. He's a Jainin from our clan. He has a bad temper, Mikoto explained. An Ucha Jainin, huh? Shin thought of his replication system. Can a common replication card copy his Sharingan prowess? He wanted to copy, not the Sharingan Kekkei Genkai itself, but the ocular prowess it granted. He wasn't sure if it was possible. His strength is at Jainin level. Copying is feasible, the system confirmed. Shin looked at the Ucha Jainin. Use one common replication card to copy his Sharingan prowess. He felt a tingling sensation in his eyes. A surge of power flooded his vision. Surprised by the sudden change, Shin quickly covered his eyes. 3 black tomo swirled momentarily in his eyes. Shin, what's wrong? Kushina asked, alarmed. Nothing, just got some soup in my eye, Shin said with a chuckle, removing his hand. Oh, be careful. Shin continued eating, but his mind was racing. He had copied the Ucha's Sharingan prowess, his 1 tomo Sharingan instantly evolving to 3 tomo. A 5-year-old with a 3 tomo Sharingan. If the Ucha clan found out, who knew what they would do? This system cheat is insane. What's the point of training when you can just copy everything? But even with this cheat, he couldn't slack off. He had to work hard, or it would be a waste of the system's potential. If I keep accumulating Sharingan prowess, can I keep evolving my Sharingan? Shin theorized that with enough ocular power, he could evolve his Manjiki Sharingan into the eternal Manjiki Sharingan without needing a sibling's eyes. Sharingan prowess was essentially in release, the manipulation of spiritual energy. Genjutsu, for example, relied on yin release. So, theoretically, with enough spiritual energy, he could even awaken the Rinnegan. No, the Rinnegan probably wasn't that simple. It seemed to require a combination of yin and yang release. But regardless, Shin felt he had stumbled upon another way to obtain the eternal Manjiki Sharingan. Hey, Shin, why are you spacing out while eating? You're getting noodles in your nose. Kushina nudged him, bringing him back to reality. Kushina, Mikoto, and Nawaki were all staring at him. Shin felt his cheeks burn. Just thinking about something, he mumbled, shaking his head to clear his thoughts. He'd contemplate this later, at home. After finishing their meal, Shin paid for everyone's ramen, including Mikoto's. Mikoto tried to pay him back, but Shin insisted, saying they were friends. I'm stuffed. Let's go. Shin wiped his mouth, then Kushina's, earning him a smug grin from her. She shot a triumphant look at Mikoto. Mikoto didn't react to the provocation, instead returning a gentle smile, much to Kushina's annoyance. Mikoto didn't seem to care about her rivalry at all. And after interacting with her, Kushina found it hard to maintain her hostility towards such a sweet girl. Hold it right there. Just as they were about to leave the ramen shop, the Ucha ninja stopped them. Shin frowned, turning to face the man. He had just copied the man's Sharingan prowess, evolving his own Sharingan to 3 tomo, but he still didn't like the guy. The man was arrogant and unpleasant, no one would like him. You're an Ucha, aren't you? Why are you with a Senju? The Ucha ninja questioned Mikoto. Mikoto lowered her head, remaining silent, her face pale. Seeing Mikoto like this, Kushina bristled. What's it to you? She retorted. She didn't like this Ucha one bit. What did you say? The Ucha stood up, his 3 tomo Sharingan glaring at Kushina. Kushina, intimidated, hid behind Shin. He was a Jainin, a killer. His killing intent, amplified by his Sharingan, was palpable. If Kushina hadn't witnessed the destruction of her clan and experienced such trauma, she might have been paralyzed with fear. Shin's eyes narrowed. He could tolerate a lot to maintain his low profile, but this was crossing the line. He was about to step in when a familiar voice rang out. "Shin, Kushina, Nawaki, what are you doing here?" Tsunade approached, flanked by two others. One had a pale face and an aura of coldness, like a venomous snake lurking in the shadows. This was Orochimaru, Tsunade's teammate. The other had spiky white hair and red markings under his eyes. "Jiraiya, is there a problem here?" Tsunade noticed the Ucha Jainin, his Sharingan activated and killing intent radiating from him. A Jainin intimidating children? How impressive. "What's your name?" Tsunade asked coldly. The Ucha Jainin paled. He recognized Tsunade. Every ninja in Konoha knew her. He could act tough in front of others, but not in front of Tsunade. She wasn't afraid of the Ucha clan, and she wasn't afraid to use her fists. If she punched him, even the Ucha clan head wouldn't be able to do anything about it. He had no choice but to back down. Besides, Tsunade was the best medic in Konoha. If he ended up in the hospital, she could make sure he never left. "Get lost. And if you ever bother them again, I'll make sure you regret it," Tsunade threatened. The Ucha Jainin, Ucha Ryota, scurried away. Even if he was an Ucha genius, the clan wouldn't risk disrespecting Tsunade for him. Tsunade was the Sandaime Hokage student. Fighting her was the same as fighting the Hokage. If the Hokage found a reason to punish them, the Ucha clan would suffer. The current Sandaime Hokage wasn't the weak old man he would become, he was still a force to be reckoned with. "Kushina, are you all right?" Shin asked. Kushina shook her head. With Shin by her side, she wasn't that scared. "I'll get you back for this. One day, Ryota." Shin glared at the Ucha's retreating figure. If they weren't in Konoha, Ryota would be dead. Shin was confident he could kill an Ucha Jainin. He might not be able to take on an elite Jainin yet, but a regular Jainin was no problem. "Fut, ha 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 ha. What did you say, kid?" Jiraiya burst out laughing. Shin looked at Jiraiya and said with a smirk, "I said, one day, I'll dig a hole and bury you in it." Jiraiya's laughter died in his throat. "Sis, thank goodness you came." "That was a close one," Nawaki said, relieved. "I'm sorry." "It's my fault," Mikoto apologized. "It's not your fault, Mikoto. That guy was just being a jerk. If I were stronger, I'd punch him in the face," Kushina said, patting Mikoto's shoulder. Shin looked at Kushina, then at Mikoto. When did they become friends? Kushina had been so hostile towards Mikoto earlier. Seeing Mikoto's vulnerability had softened Kushina's heart. Her hostility had melted away. "You're an Ucha?" Tsunade asked Mikoto. "Why, yes." Mikoto looked at Tsunade nervously. "Don't be scared. I'm not going to eat you. But you're quite different from the other Ucha, aren't you?" Tsunade observed. Mikoto didn't have the usual Ucha arrogance. Most Ucha, regardless of age or gender, were arrogant and haughty. They were the classic young masters, always looking down on others. Tsunade had a good impression of Mikoto. She didn't judge her based on her clan. "Let me introduce you. This is my teammate, Orochimaru, and this deadweight is Jiraiya." Tsunade gestured towards her two companions. Shin had already recognized them. They were hard to miss. "Deadweight? You're calling me deadweight?" Jiraiya grumbled. Orochimaru remained silent, his gaze fixed on Shin. Shin looked back at the snake Sannin. Why was he staring at him? Had Orochimaru already embarked on his path of forbidden research and taken an interest in him? No, that was impossible. It was too early for that. But why was he staring? Shin felt uncomfortable under Orochimaru's intense gaze, like a mouse being watched by a snake. Interesting, Orochimaru said with a sly smile. Shin frowned. Orochimaru's smile didn't bode well. After a brief exchange, Orochimaru and Jiraiya left, but Tsunade stayed behind. As Orochimaru departed, he cast another lingering glance at Shin. Shin didn't sense any malice, but he still felt uneasy. What was that confrontation with Uchiha Ryota about? Tsunade inquired. Nawaki explained the situation, causing Tsunade to frown. The Uchiha are always causing trouble. Mikoto shifted uncomfortably. She knew Tsunade wasn't referring to her specifically, but she still felt awkward. She was an Uchiha, after all. Don't worry, I wasn't talking about you, Tsunade reassured her, noticing Mikoto's discomfort. She had a good impression of Mikoto, who seemed different from the other Uchiha. By the way, I have to leave the village for a mission. It's an escort mission, should take about half a month. Tsunade informed them. Oh. Nawaki couldn't help but grin. Tsunade's smile vanished, replaced by a dangerous glint in her eyes. Nawaki, you seem happy about this? No, not at all. Nawaki shook his head vigorously. I'll deal with you later. I have to go. Tsunade glared at Nawaki, then waved goodbye to the others before turning to leave. Nawaki breathed a sigh of relief once she was out of sight. Nawaki, are you scared of your sister? Shin asked. Nawaki scratched his head. A little. She's really strict when she trains me. Come on, weren't you going to show us around Konoha? We have some time before class. Let's explore the area. Shin looked at Mikoto. Mikoto-san, want to join us? Oh, may I? Mikoto looked surprised and pleased. Of course. Shin smiled, and the four of them set off to explore Konoha. Shin and Kushina were unfamiliar with the village, so Nawaki acted as their guide, pointing out various landmarks and locations. Since they didn't have much time before their afternoon class, they only explored the area near the academy. It was good to familiarize themselves with the surroundings. Soon, it was time to head back for class. Back in their seats, Shin asked Mikoto, Mikoto, that incident earlier. It won't cause you any trouble, will it? He had dropped the honorifics, a sign of their growing friendship. Mikoto shook her head. I'll be fine. I'm practically invisible in the Uchiha clan. No one will bother me over this. Actually, I should be the one apologizing. Mikoto looked at Shin and Kushina apologetically. Mikoto, we're friends now. No need to apologize, Kushina said. Perhaps they were destined to be best friends. Kushina, who had initially been hostile towards Mikoto, now seemed quite fond of her. The afternoon class was another lecture. Kushina wasn't interested in theory, she felt like falling asleep. Shin felt the same. If the lecture had been useful, he would have paid attention, but it was all stuff he already knew or found irrelevant. School let out early, a little after 4 in the afternoon. After school, they accepted Nawaki's invitation to explore more of Konoha. Back at the Senju compound, Shin refrained from practicing taijutsu or kenjutsu. He didn't want to attract attention so soon after arriving in Konoha, so he focused on chakra refinement. He didn't know if the Sandaime had assigned Anbu to watch them, but it was better to be safe than sorry. Practicing taijutsu or kenjutsu might reveal his true strength. Even practicing ninjutsu was risky. For now, he'd stick to refining chakra. Should I copy the Byakugan? Shin thought of his advanced replication card. He had 4 cards in total, 3 common and 1 advanced. The advanced card could copy S-rank jutsu, Koge-level chakra and physique, and even Kekkei Genkai. The Byakugan, while seemingly less impressive than the Sharingan and Rinnegan, had powerful sensory capabilities and could even evolve into the Tenseigan. The Tenseigan was a jutsu on par with the Rinnegan, perhaps even surpassing it in offensive power. After some consideration, Shin decided against it. While the Byakugan sensory abilities were useful, especially for detecting surveillance, it would also turn his eyes completely white. Walking around with those eyes would draw unwanted attention, especially from the Hyga clan. If only I had the mind's eye of Kagura? It's even better than the Byakugan. He shook his head, pushing the thought aside. He didn't know how to awaken it, or if it was even possible for him. As far as he knew, only Karen possessed that ability. A few days passed. Shin and Kushina's days were filled with school, exploring Konoha with Nawaki and Mikoto, and chakra refinement. One day, they were summoned to Uzumaki Maito's residence, along with Kai and Akiko. I've called you here today to teach you the Uzumaki clan sealing jutsu. Shin's face lit up. This was great news. With Maito's guidance, they would progress quickly in Finjutsu. Kai and Akiko were also excited. We'll start with the most basic sealing formulas, Maito said seriously. These children were the last remnants of the Uzumaki clan, the hope for its revival. As a former princess of the clan, Maito wanted nothing more than to see it restored to its former glory. She would teach them everything she could. How much they learned, however, depended on their talent. From then on, their days were filled with school, followed by lessons in Finjutsu from Maito after dinner. Under Maito's tutelage, Shin, already a genius, progressed rapidly. Kushina also learned a lot. She was talented, second only to Shin. But Shin had warned her not to stand out too much. She should learn the jutsu, but pretend she wasn't as skilled as she actually was. Over a year had passed since Shin arrived in Konoha. In the training ground of Tsunade's small courtyard, Shin practiced his swordsmanship, his katana flashing in the sunlight. Not many in the shinobi world specialized in kenjutsu. Most relied on ninjutsu, it was the primary focus of their training. The most skilled swordsman in Konoha was probably Sakumo Hatake, though it seemed he hadn't earned the moniker Konoha's White Fang yet. Shin hadn't even heard the name Sakumo Hatake before. He was probably still relatively unknown. Mastering kenjutsu required not just hard work, but also finding your own path. From the beginning, Shin had known what path he wanted to take, one that maximized his strengths. And his strengths were? His perfect sage body, granting him monstrous strength and speed. His kenjutsu would be one of overwhelming power and swiftness. 3-step slash. Shin unleashed 3 slashes in the blink of an eye, effortlessly slicing the wooden training dummy into 4 pieces. 3 slashes per second were child's play for him now. His limit was 5. 5 slashes in a single second, a true testament to his speed. Even an elite genin, caught off guard, wouldn't be able to withstand such an assault. If I could combine this with space-time ninjutsu, I can already imagine myself racking up kills on the battlefield. Unfortunately, he didn't know any space-time ninjutsu. He was eager to learn, though. Such jutsu were incredibly versatile, invaluable for both offense and defense. Shin, breakfast is ready. We have that test today, so we need to leave early, Kushina called out. Shin sheathed his katana and headed inside. Kushina had already prepared breakfast. It was a simple meal of bread and milk. Shin had baked the bread, Kushina had only set the table. He didn't dare let Kushina cook. She was a master of creating culinary abominations. The one time he had tried her cooking, he had spent the entire morning throwing up. From then on, he had banned her from the kitchen. After breakfast, Shin packed their lunches and they headed out. Tsunade wasn't home. As an elite genin, she was always on missions. At the academy, the classroom was filled with a mix of anxiety and excitement. Those with good grades were eager to show off, while those who struggled dreaded the test. Mikoto, I'm counting on you for the written exam, Shin said as he sat down. The morning was dedicated to the written test. Shin had no interest in studying those theoretical concepts, and the questions were often bizarre. Cheating was his only option. But he had to choose his source wisely. Most of the class were hopeless. Thankfully, Mikoto was a top student, consistently scoring first in the written exams. Just don't get caught, Mikoto said with a smile. Don't worry, I won't, Shin assured her. Mikoto gave him a dubious look. That's what you said last time, and we both ended up getting punished. Ahem, that was an accident. Shin cringed, remembering the time he got caught cheating. But that was a fluke, it wouldn't happen again. The morning passed, and the written test concluded. Shin had copied Mikoto's answers, he was confident he'd done well. He had also helped Kushina and Nawaki cheat. They were both terrible at academics. After the written test, they had a break for lunch. Shin, Kushina, and Mikoto found a quiet spot to eat their lunch. Over the past year, they had become close friends. We have the practical test this afternoon. Are you nervous? Mikoto asked. Why would we be nervous? We've done this so many times already, Shin said nonchalantly. The academy held tests every month. These test scores don't even matter. They don't affect graduation, Shin added. Then why did you cheat? Mikoto's question almost made Shin choke on his food. Ahem, I just don't want to be at the bottom of the class. Yeah, me neither, Kushina chimed in. After lunch, they had a short break before the practical test. Tanaka-sensei led the class to the training grounds. The results for the written test are in. Acha Mikoto scored a perfect score, placing first in the class, Tanaka-sensei announced. No one seemed surprised. Mikoto was always at the top. Also, Uzumaki Shin, Senju Nawaki, did you two cheat? Who copied from whom? You have the same score, and you even got the same questions wrong. Tanaka-sensei glared at them. Nawaki avoided his gaze, while Shin remained calm. Inwardly, however, Shin was cursing Nawaki's stupidity. He had helped him cheat, but did he have to copy everything? When Shin copied from Mikoto, he had deliberately answered a few questions incorrectly. Kushina had done the same when she copied from him. But Nawaki had copied everything, including the wrong answers. It was no wonder they got caught. Nawaki, sorry buddy, but it's time to ditch the dead weight, Shin thought ruthlessly. Tanaka-sensei, Nawaki copied from me. I know it was wrong, but he threatened to beat me up if I didn't let him. I didn't have a choice. Shin put on an Oscar-worthy performance, as if he had truly been threatened. Nawaki gaped at him. He had begged Shin to help him cheat, but he had never threatened him. Nawaki, I can't believe you do that. I'm telling Grandma Maito. Well, maybe if you confess, I might reconsider. Kushina said angrily. Shin mentally gave Kushina a thumbs up. He decided he wouldn't help Nawaki cheat anymore. This guy was a liability. Nawaki felt a wave of despair. Kushina's words were a clear threat. She was forcing him to confess. Shin and Kushina were so mean. I'm sorry, Tanaka-sensei. I copied, Nawaki confessed, hanging his head. Copy the questions from this test 100 times. You have 3 days, Tanaka-sensei said without a trace of sympathy. Nawaki felt like he had been struck by lightning. Copying the questions 100 times? He'd be dead from exhaustion. And he only had 3 days. He wanted to cry. Nawaki squatted on the ground, his face a picture of despair. Copying the test questions 100 times was pure torture. Shin gave him a sympathetic look. Honest, he thought. Not gloating at all. Next up, the practical test. We'll start with kunai throwing. Tanaka-sensei announced, glancing at Nawaki. Nawaki, what are you still doing on the floor? Want me to add another 100 lines? Nawaki shot to his feet, glaring at Tanaka-sensei as if he were a demon. Shin patted Nawaki's shoulder. Sacrifices must be made, my friend. You understand. Nawaki gave him a mournful look. 100 times. How could he understand? All right, let's begin. Uzumaki Shin, you're first. Lucky me, first up. Shin smiled, pulled a kunai from his pouch and stood at the designated distance, about 15 meters from the target. They were still young students, throwing accurately from a greater distance would be challenging for most. With a flick of his wrist, the kunai flew through the air, striking the target with a satisfying thud. 9 points. Not bad. Almost a perfect score, Tanaka-sensei said approvingly. HMPH, is that all you've got? A sneer reached Shin's ears. He didn't need to turn around to know it was Kai. Shin turned and faced him. Kai, what was that? I didn't quite catch it. Say that again. Kai met Shin's gaze, a flicker of fear in his eyes. Shin had broken his leg when they were younger, the memory still haunted him. He wasn't sure if he hated Shin more than he feared him, or the other way around. Seeing Kai shut his mouth, Shin snorted and returned to Kushina's side. Why only 9 points? Kushina whispered. Don't want to stand out too much. 9 is a good score, Shin said with a smile. He didn't need to flaunt his abilities. He was still a young dragon, learning to fly. He would soar through the skies one day. The kunai throwing test concluded. For students achieved a perfect score, Mikoto, Nawaki, Minato, and, surprisingly, Kai. That smug look on his face is really annoying. Kushina glared at Kai, her fists clenched. If he came any closer, she'd punch him. Don't mind him, Shin said calmly. But inwardly, he was plotting ways to take Kai down a peg or two. After the kunai throwing, it was time for the sparring matches. They were paired up for one-on-one combat. I'll now announce the pairings. Uzumaki Shin and Senju Nawaki, Uzumaki Kushina and Ucha Mikoto, Haiga Hayashi and Haiga Hisashi, Uzumaki Kai and Namikaze Minato. Whoa, sibling rivalry. Tanaka-sensei is ruthless. Shin looked at Hayashi and Hisashi, feigning sympathy while inwardly relishing the upcoming match. I wouldn't mind being paired with you, Hayashi said to Shin, his expression stoic. Nah, I don't want to be with a stick in the mud. Hayashi always had the same serious, expressionless face. Shin found it boring. Shin, we're paired up. What am I supposed to do? Nawaki asked, his voice filled with dread. Nawaki, out of allowance again? Tell you what, I'll treat you to yakiniku. Just throw the match, okay? Shin gave him a friendly smile. And Nawaki, you wouldn't want Tsunade to find out you cheated on the test, would you? Bribery and threats. Nawaki caved instantly. Hayashi, standing nearby, twitched. Sensei, something's fishy here. The sparring matches began. Shin had bribed Nawaki, so their match ended quickly. Ouch! Why did you have to hit so hard? Nawaki clutched his stomach, barely able to stand. Duh, it has to look convincing. What if they find out we're faking it? Shin helped Nawaki up. They watched the other matches. Kushina and Mikoto were evenly matched, though Kushina wasn't using her full strength. At this stage, most of them didn't know any jutsu. The Uzumaki and Senju, with their superior physique, had an advantage in taijutsu. This was evident in Kai and Minato's match. Minato was getting pummeled. The Senju and Uzumaki were incredibly durable. Minato's punches barely fazed Kai, but when Kai landed a blow, Minato felt it. In the end, Kai emerged victorious. Shin shook his head. This was the advantage of having a Kekkei Genkai. The world was unfair. But this was only temporary. Kai could bully Minato now, but in the future, he wouldn't stand a chance. Minato-san, are you all right? Akiko approached Minato, concern in her eyes. Thank you for your concern, Akiko-san. I'm fine, Minato said with a smile. Despite the bruises, his smile remained bright. Kai, who had been gloating over his victory, froze when he saw Akiko fussing over Minato. He had a crush on Akiko. Seeing this, jealousy burned within him. Looks like things are about to get interesting, Shin said to Nawaki, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Kai stomped towards Minato. Minato! Minato turned, only to be met with Kai's fist. Caught off guard, Minato was struck squarely in the eye, earning himself a shiner. Kai, what are you doing? Akiko yelled angrily. Tanaka-sensei's attention was drawn to the commotion. He rushed over and grabbed Kai. Kai, your match is over. Why did you attack Minato-san? Tanaka-sensei demanded. Hey, what's going on? Kushina and Mikoto joined Shin. Ooh? Your match is over? Yeah, and I won. Kushina said excitedly, looking at Shin expectantly. Oh. Shin's flat response deflated Kushina's excitement. Kushina pouted. Couldn't he at least sound a bit more enthusiastic? Shin, what's going on here? Mikoto, seeing Tanaka-sensei scolding Kai, asked Shin for an explanation. Well, it's a bit complicated, but I'll give you the short version. Shin cleared his throat. Kai likes Akiko, but Akiko seems to have a thing for Minato. So, Kai, in a fit of jealousy, punched Minato. Wow, Kai likes Akiko? Poor Akiko, Kushina said, shaking her head. By the way, your match ended so quickly. Who won? Mikoto asked curiously. I did, of course. Nawaki is no match for me. I could take him down with one hand tied behind my back. Shin glanced at Nawaki, but he wasn't exaggerating. He really could defeat Nawaki with one hand. You're so mean, Shin. You bribed me. If you hadn't, I would have crushed you. Nawaki protested. Yeah, right. You'd be the one getting crushed, Kushina scoffed. If Shin used his full strength, Nawaki wouldn't stand a chance. It's satisfying to see Kai get scolded, Shin said with a smirk. Kai was severely reprimanded and forced to apologize to Minato. Minato readily forgave him. He forgave him just like that? Shouldn't he at least try to get even? Shin remarked. Uzumaki Shin. Kai roared. What? Want to fight me? I'll break your other leg. Kai, who had been fuming, felt a phantom pain in his leg and backed down. The other students were surprised. Why was Kai so afraid of Shin? Shin was good, but he wasn't that much better than Kai. What was going on? All right, no fighting. If I catch you brawling, you'll be punished. Tanaka-sensei warned. That concludes today's test. Class dismissed. Minato-san, go get those injuries treated. Cheers erupted as the students celebrated their early dismissal. Shin, don't forget you owe me yakiniku, Nawaki reminded him. Don't worry, you'll get your meat. Let's go. Shin, Kushina, Mikoto, and a hopeful Nawaki headed towards a yakiniku restaurant. At the Senju compound, the Sandaime Hokage stood outside Uzumaki Maito's residence. Maito-sama, Sarutobi Hiruzen requests an audience. Ah, it's Little Monkey. Come in. Hiruzen blushed at the nickname. Thankfully, they were alone, it would have been embarrassing otherwise. Maito-sama, you summoned me? Hiruzen hadn't come of his own volition, Maito had sent for him. Hiruzen, I called you here to discuss the Nine-Tails Jinkriki. Maito had stopped calling him Little Monkey, much to his relief. This? I'm old, Hiruzen. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. We need to choose a new Jinkriki soon. Hiruzen was silent for a moment. What are your thoughts, Maito-sama? The Nine-Tails Jinkriki should ideally be an Uzumaki. Only their constitution can properly suppress the QB. Otherwise, it might go on a rampage or even break free from the seal. Maito's voice was grave. The Nine-Tails was a force to be reckoned with. Without Hashirama, Konoha would struggle to contain its power. I agree. Hiruzen was also cautious when it came to the Nine-Tails. Its importance was undeniable, and the Uzumaki were the most suitable candidates for becoming its Jinkriki. Do you have anyone in mind, Maito-sama? I can only offer suggestions. The final decision is yours, Hiruzen. First, I recommend Uzumaki Shin. He's the most suitable candidate. Then there's Uzumaki Kushina and Uzumaki Akiko. What about Uzumaki Kai? He seems quite talented. Mito shook her head. He is talented, but he's also consumed by hatred and jealousy. He's not suitable to be the Nine-Tails Jinkriki. Any Uzumaki was technically suitable, but Kai's personality made him a poor choice. Uzumaki Shin? Hiruzen frowned. He had gathered information on the Uzumaki survivors. Uzumaki Hikaru was out of the question. He was an adult and harder to control. Hiruzen didn't trust him. As for Shin, his performance at the academy wasn't as impressive as Kai's. Why was Mito recommending him? Is this for the Senju clan? Hiruzen wondered. Shin was close to Tsunade and was practically considered a Senju. Perhaps Mito was trying to secure an advantage for the Senju. Hiruzen's guess was completely off the mark. Mito recommended Shin because of his immense life force, which could suppress the Nine-Tails completely. He would be the safest choice. The Kyuubi is volatile, filled with hatred. I think a female Jinkriki would be better. Perhaps we can use love to tame the beast. Uzumaki Akiko seems like a good choice. Hiruzen lowered his head. Mito looked at him, disappointment clouding her eyes. Hiruzen had changed. His thoughts were transparent to her. She understood why he wasn't choosing Shin or Kushina. It was because of their close ties to the Senju clan. Mito-sama, what do you think? Hiruzen asked, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. The Nine-Tails was too important. He couldn't allow any single clan to control it. You've already made up your mind, Hiruzen. Do as you see fit. I'm tired. You may leave. Mito waved him away, her disappointment evident. Then I'll take my leave. If you need anything, Mito-sama, please don't hesitate to send for me. Hiruzen bowed and left. Outside, his guilt was overwhelming, but then his expression hardened. Forgive me, Mito-sama, but the Nine-Tails Jinkriki is too important. No single clan in Konoha should have control over it. Shin and Kushina were too close to the Senju. Kai's personality was unsuitable. That left Akiko. Hiruzen didn't want to see the Senju clan rise to power again. Evening fell, and Shin and his friends emerged from the yakiniku restaurant, Nawaki patting his full stomach with satisfaction. You sure can pack it away, Nawaki. Looks like I'll have to drag your sister to the gambling dens again. Shin patted his wallet, which was significantly lighter than before. Can I come too? I want to make some money. Nawaki's eyes lit up. You want to make money? What for? Tsunade will just take it all, Shin said, pitying the boy. Having a gambling-addicted sister must be tough. Shin, Kushina, I'll see you tomorrow, Mikoto said with a smile. The Senju and Ucha compounds were on opposite sides of the village. With the deep-rooted animosity between the two clans, they naturally wouldn't live close to each other. See you tomorrow, Shin waved. Kushina pinched Shin discreetly, then gave Mikoto a bright smile. Shin glared at Kushina, who glared right back. What was that for? Shin grumbled. He hadn't done anything to deserve a pinch. HMPH, you and Mikoto seem to be getting awfully chummy. A bit too chummy, Kushina huffed, jealousy evident in her voice. Shin shook his head at Kushina's childish jealousy and headed home with her. As for Nawaki? He was left behind, forgotten. Back at the Senju compound, Nawaki went to his own residence, while Shin and Kushina returned to Tsunade's courtyard. Oh, Tsunade, you're back. Shin's eyes lit up when he saw her. Tsunade glanced at him. Seeing that sparkle in his eyes, she knew he wanted something. Spit it out. What do you need? I'm in a good mood, I might just agree. You'll definitely agree to this. I'm a bit short on cash. How about we make a trip to the gambling dens? HMPH, using me to make money again? Do you have no faith in my gambling skills? Tsunade stood up, grabbed Shin's face, and started pinching his cheeks. Tsunade, let go of Shin right now. Kushina, the queen of jealousy, couldn't stand seeing Tsunade manhandle Shin. Tsunade chuckled at Kushina's outburst. After a while, she finally let go. Shin's cheeks were so soft and squishy, she could pinch them all day. Fine, I'll help you make some money. But we split the profits 50-50, Tsunade declared. What? 50-50? That's not fair. Shin protested, rubbing his cheeks. If it weren't for the fact that Tsunade had agreed to keep his strength a secret, he would never have agreed to her cheek-pinching condition. Not fair? Don't forget, you're relying on me to make the money, Tsunade said with a smirk. Fine. Shin might be complaining, but he knew this was a good deal. All he had to do was bet against Tsunade, and he'd make a killing. That was his strategy. Thankfully, Tsunade wasn't infamous yet. She wasn't known as the legendary sucker yet. Otherwise, this plan wouldn't work. Let's go. Tsunade grabbed Shin's hand, channeled chakra to her feet, and vanished in a series of leaps, leaving Kushina fuming. That woman. She left me behind again. Kushina wanted to follow, but she didn't know where they were going. She could only wait at home. They returned late at night, both grinning as they counted their winnings. Shin, when are we going to make another killing? Tsunade had earned over 10 million ryo, even after splitting the profits. That was equivalent to the reward for over a dozen S-rank missions. When we run out of money. This should last us a while. If they were frugal, 10 million ryo could last them over a decade. But being a shinobi was expensive. Still, this should be enough to last them until graduation. You're finally back. Shin, did that woman do anything to you? Kushina rushed out, grabbing Shin and glaring at Tsunade. Hey, brat, do you think I'm some kind of pervert? Tsunade said indignantly. HMPH, you think you're being subtle? I see right through you, you cougar. Shin, embarrassed, excused himself and went to his room. You two have fun arguing. I'm going to bed. Little girl, if you weren't so young, you'd be crying in a corner right now, Tsunade threatened, slamming her fist on a nearby table, shattering it. I'm not scared of you. In a few years, I'll challenge you to a duel, and we'll see who's stronger. Kushina declared, her small fist clenched. Tsunade simply chuckled, her dismissive attitude clear. Kushina took a deep breath. She wasn't strong enough to defeat Tsunade yet. She'd have to be patient. I'm warning you, if you pinch Shin's face again, I won't forgive you. Kushina left to train, seemingly motivated by her rivalry with Tsunade. Tsunade smiled after Kushina left. She didn't mind their bickering. Having Shin and Kushina around had livened up the place. Before, she had lived here alone. It had been lonely. As for Nawaki, he was terrified of Tsunade, always afraid she'd take his allowance. He usually avoided her. In his room, Shin sat on the tatami mat, refining chakra. He didn't know how much chakra he had now, but he felt it surpassed that of most Koge. Of course, this was just in terms of quantity. The quality of his chakra was probably inferior to that of a Koge who had been honing their chakra for decades. Having a large amount of chakra wasn't enough, quality was also important. For example, a tailed beast's chakra was undoubtedly superior to that of a human. Shin, despite having a perfect sage body, still had to refine his chakra to improve its quality. There were no shortcuts, unless he became the Ten Tails Jinkriki. The next morning, Shin woke up early, washed his face, brushed his teeth, and headed to the training ground. He focused on taijutsu and kenjutsu, leaving ninjutsu practice for later. Well, not here, at least. He had sent several shadow clones to secluded areas in Konoha to train in ninjutsu. When the clones dispersed, their memories and experiences would return to him, making it an efficient way to train. Sharingan, activate. Shin's eyes turned crimson, 3 tomo swirling within. Still just a 3 tomo Sharingan. When will it evolve into the Manjaki? Shin sighed. Over the past year, he had used his 3 common replication cards, copying the Sharingan prowess of Uchiha Jainin. He had discovered that he could copy the same ability from the same person multiple times. All 3 copies were from Uchiha Ryota, the Jainin he had encountered at the ramen shop. These repeated copies had significantly increased his ocular power. Even elite Uchiha probably couldn't match him in that regard. But his Sharingan still hadn't evolved into the Manjiki, which was disappointing. Did he really need to copy an existing Manjiki Sharingan? He could, technically. He had 2 advanced replication cards. One was a reward from a mission, and the other was from the system's annual gift. He had been lucky that year. He had the cards, but where could he find an Uchiha with the Manjiki Sharingan? Did any even exist right now? He wasn't sure. And even if they did, he had no way to approach them. The 3-Tomo Sharingan was still useful. It granted enhanced visual perception, the ability to copy basic jutsu and taijutsu, and even some genjutsu. But compared to the Manjiki Sharingan, it was flawed. He wouldn't mention that to anyone, though. Shin deactivated his Sharingan. He couldn't let Tsunade see it, who knew what kind of trouble it might cause. After training for a while, he went back to prepare breakfast. Neither Kushina nor Tsunade were the type to cook. "Yo, Shin, you're up early as always." Tsunade had just woken up and saw that Shin had already prepared breakfast. "It's nice having someone make breakfast." "I never used to eat breakfast," she said, taking a seat at the table. "That explains why you're so underdeveloped." Shin glanced at her chest. Had his transmigration somehow affected Tsunade's development? It was a cruel twist of fate. Sensing his pitying gaze, Tsunade scowled. "Want to taste my fist? I'll go wake Kushina up." Shin made a quick escape. Tsunade snorted, then glanced down at her chest. It was a bit small. "Damn that brat." "I'm still growing," she grumbled, digging into the breakfast Shin had prepared. If Shin had heard her, he would have scoffed. She was already 17. In the world of shinobi, that was practically an adult. Shin entered Kushina's room. He stared at the mess, speechless. It had only been 2 days since he last cleaned her room, and it was already a disaster zone. Unlike other girls with their tidy rooms, Kushina's was always chaotic. It was clear she wasn't the most organized person. "Kushina, wake up!" Shin nudged her. Her sleeping position was interesting. I'm so tired." 5 more minutes." Kushina mumbled, her eyes still closed, her arms wrapping around Shin. "It's getting late. If you don't get up now, we'll be late for school." "No, I don't want to get up." Kushina snuggled closer to Shin, enjoying the warmth and comfort. "This is so comfy." "Shin, let's sleep together from now on, okay?" "Sure, if you don't mind." "I'm not complaining," Shin said with a smile. Sleeping with Kushina would be like cuddling a soft pillow. It wouldn't be bad. "I don't mind at all. Let's sleep together from now on." Kushina opened her eyes, looking at Shin with a bright smile. "All right, let's get up and eat breakfast first. Otherwise, Tsunade will finish it all." "But I'm so sleepy." Kushina rubbed her eyes. She had trained late last night and hadn't gotten enough sleep. "Were you refining chakra again?" "Don't push yourself too hard. It's not good for you," Shin said sternly. "And it's not just about having a lot of chakra. There's more to strength than that. You need to know how to use it. Having chakra without knowing any jutsu is useless." "But I know jutsu. The Rasengan, the Water Dragon Jutsu, the Shadow Clone Jutsu." Kushina counted off the jutsu she knew. They were all jutsu that Shin knew and had taught her. "You haven't mastered them yet. Focus on honing your jutsu. Don't worry about chakra refinement for now." Shin pulled Kushina out of bed. "Wait, can you go outside? I need to change." Kushina was usually carefree, but she wouldn't change clothes in front of Shin. "All right." Shin left the room. When he returned, he found that Tsunade had already devoured most of the breakfast. "You sure can eat." He'd have to make more, it wasn't enough for the three of them. "You're one to talk." "I'm full. Gotta go, I have things to do." Tsunade pinched Shin's cheek and left. Shin made more breakfast, and after they finished eating, they left for the academy. "Aren't we taking lunch today?" Kushina asked. "Kushina, remember? Mikoto said she'd make us lunch. She's a much better cook than I am." "HMPH, I can cook too." "It's just lunch." "I'll make you lunch tomorrow." Kushina was jealous that Shin had praised Mikoto's cooking. Shin's face paled. "Kushina making him lunch? Kushina, let's not. I don't want to end up in the hospital, or worse, the cemetery." He wouldn't dare eat anything she made. Shin and Kushina arrived at the academy just in time. But someone was even later, Nawaki. Under Shin's amused gaze, Nawaki was sent out to stand in the hallway as punishment. "Hey, where's Akiko?" Shin scanned the classroom, but Akiko was nowhere to be seen. "Shin, what are you thinking about?" Mikoto asked curiously, noticing his distraction. "I was just wondering why Akiko isn't here." Kushina, who had been drowsy, suddenly perked up, her eyes fixed on Shin. "Shin, don't tell me you have a thing for Akiko," she asked suspiciously. "Kushina, your eyes are scary," Mikoto giggled. "I'm not interested in Akiko." "I was just curious," Shin said, a bit exasperated. He had no interest in little girls. He wasn't a creep. Besides, Akiko wasn't as pretty as Kushina or Mikoto. "I have an announcement regarding Uzumaki Akiko. I'm sure many of you are wondering why she isn't here today." Tanaka-sensei stood at the podium. "Akiko has taken a leave of absence. She won't be coming to school for a while." Shin pondered the announcement, a suspicion forming in his mind. After class, Shin approached Kai. "Kai, you live with Akiko. Do you know why she's absent?" "Why should I tell you?" Kai glared at Shin. "Good question. How about this?" Shin placed a hand on Kai's shoulder, applying pressure. Kai broke out in a cold sweat, his shoulder screaming in pain. He didn't cry out, though, maintaining his pride. But he quickly caved. "Akiko was called away early this morning. I think she went to Lady Maito's place." "Thanks for the info." Shin smiled and returned to his seat, his suspicions confirmed. He guessed that Akiko had been chosen as the Nine-Tails Jinkriki. He didn't know why Akiko, but it was good news for him and Kushina. Becoming a Jinkriki wasn't a good thing. Not everyone could be like Naruto and gain the tailed beast's approval. "Shin, you've never cared about Akiko before. Why are you suddenly interested in her?" Kushina asked when Shin returned to his seat. She knew Shin wasn't romantically interested in Akiko, but she couldn't help but feel jealous. "Because it's important to us," Shin said cryptically. If he or Kushina had been chosen as the Jinkriki, he would have had to find a way to refuse. Now, he didn't have to worry about that. Akiko's absence meant she was probably receiving special training from Maito. Becoming a Jinkriki wasn't easy, it required rigorous preparation. After school, they received a notice that they wouldn't be attending Maito's lessons for the time being. Shin wasn't disappointed. He had already learned everything he needed to know. Mind's Eye of Kagura. Shin closed his eyes, and his surroundings appeared in his mind. He could sense chakra with incredible clarity. He had awakened the Mind's Eye of Kagura, a secret technique that only the Uzumaki clan could learn. Maito had taught it to him. She had also taught it to the others, but he didn't know if they had mastered it. Kushina hadn't. He doubted Kai and Akiko had either. He scanned the entire Senju compound and its surroundings with his expanded sensory range. He continued using the Mind's Eye of Kagura for an hour before finally opening his eyes, exhaustion weighing on him. It was mental exhaustion. The chakra cost was minimal, but the strain on his mind was significant, especially with prolonged use. But it had its benefits. It slowly increased his mental power. It was one of the ways he had found to strengthen his mind. The other method was to use the system's replication cards to copy ocular prowess. Looks like Tsunade isn't coming back. Let's eat. Shin exited his room and announced to Kushina. I've been waiting forever. I'm starving. Kushina whined dramatically. Shin chuckled and prepared a lavish dinner. They had money now, there was no need to be frugal. After dinner, Shin trained his taijutsu and kenjutsu in the training ground. He then dispelled his shadow clones, absorbing their memories and experiences. He had secretly sent them out to train in ninjutsu. Shin organized the knowledge he had gained, refined chakra for an hour, then took a bath and prepared for bed. Just as he lay down, his door creaked open, and Kushina entered, clutching a blanket. Shin stared at her, bewildered. Kushina, what are you doing in my room? Shouldn't you be sleeping? Did you forget what you said this morning? We're sleeping together from now on. You promised. Don't tell me you're going back on your word. Kushina tried to sound fierce, but Shin only saw cuteness. Fierce cuteness. Kushina, you're really going to sleep with me? Shin asked, surprised. Of course. And we've slept together before, haven't we? Kushina climbed onto the tatami mat, snuggled up next to Shin, wrapped her arms around him, and rested her head on his chest. That was when we were little. Don't you feel awkward now, Kushina? Shin inhaled the sweet scent of her hair. Not at all. I feel comfortable sleeping with you, Shin. Kushina snuggled closer, nuzzling him. Shin wasn't going to argue. That would be stupid. All right, let's get some sleep. But try to stay still, okay? No moving around. Shin, do you dislike me? Kushina pouted. Even in the darkness, with only the moonlight filtering through the window, Shin could see her expression. Even if I were to dislike someone, it wouldn't be you. Now go to sleep. Shin pinched her cheek and closed his eyes, enjoying the warmth of this human-shaped pillow. Kushina also felt comfortable and safe in Shin's arms. She quickly drifted off to sleep. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the first chapter of What If Naruto's Ancestor Had the Copy System? There's so much more to come as Shin's journey unfolds, and if this video gets enough views, the next part will be coming soon. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated. Let me know what you think in the comments, your feedback means a lot. See you in the next one.